Radar is a powerful part of any defensive system. It can see high and it can see long, but it isn't infallible. Its key weakness is it can't detect an aircraft that is using natural features to shield itself from the radar beam, or to fly below it. And what isn't detected won't be shot down. So any air force likely to be deployed where there are hostile ground forces will need low flying as one of its options to keep down losses. The British Armed Forces are required to go anywhere in the world to help prevent conflicts, resolve crises, and respond to emergencies. The flexibility and speed of reaction of air power means that it's always likely to spearhead any British involvement in operations overseas. And most military interventions we're called upon to make will probably involve opponents well equipped with modern air defense radar and weapons. So the decision whether or not to fly at low level in future conflict will depend on a complex balance of many factors. In some cases, as in Kosovo, the best option for fast jet aircraft might be to operate at medium level with fighter and electronic warfare support to suppress an enemy's air defenses and jam his radars. If this support is not available, the only option might be to fly at low level. At other stages of an operation too, the low-level option may have to be selected. This might be as a result of the information provided by intelligence or the need for surprise. In particular, the close air support of ground forces will usually require low-level operations. Some non-precision weapons can only be delivered accurately from low level. And against some targets, even precision-guided weapons are more effective from a high-speed, low-level release. Some specialist reconnaissance equipment will not work effectively at higher altitudes. Therefore, reconnaissance too will often need to be at low level and high speed. The Royal Air Force is one of the very few air forces in the world to have such a vital operational capability. However, the weather can often be the most critical factor in deciding what level attacking aircraft must fly. For example, a severe limitation of modern laser-guided standoff weapons is that laser designation cannot penetrate cloud cover. That prevents this type of attack from medium or high altitudes. Crews may also be required to identify the target visually prior to weapon release. In some cases, this may only be possible at low level. But jets at least have the benefit of speed to aid their survival. Helicopters are maneuverable but much slower, and their operational roles dictate that they have to spend much of their time close to the ground. That can make them vulnerable to hostile forces, even those equipped with the most basic of anti-aircraft weapons. For most Army and Army support helicopters, therefore, survival means concealment by rarely flying higher than the tops of the trees. Transport aircraft too are relatively slow-moving and also have to operate at low level. But for their pilots, low-flying skills are by no means restricted to use in a combat zone. They're just as likely to be necessary on a humanitarian mission. Just as helicopter pilots need their low-flying skills for search and rescue, and for emergency help within the UK. And those who fly the next generation of aircraft coming into service will need to be just as capable. But low flying isn't just a necessary skill. It's also a very demanding one. Low flying skills can't just be turned on like a tap. It has to be practiced constantly and as much as possible in the types of environment that aircrew are most likely to encounter. So it's not enough just to learn the skills required in initial training. There has to be continuation training throughout a pilot's career so that he or she is able to take on any operational role at a moment's notice. With the wide variety of roles that helicopters perform, that's why the majority of aircraft which low fly in the UK are rotary wing. And helicopters are leading the way with a new development. Sophisticated night vision equipment now allows safe low-level flight at night without the use of terrain-following radar which may be detected by an enemy. That gives the UK's forces the major advantage of being able to operate when others can't. That has the double benefit of both increasing operational flexibility and reducing losses. But once again, those benefits only come with sufficient training. But just because there's a need for low-flying training driven by operational demands, it doesn't mean that its effect on others is ignored. Far from it. Low flying in the UK is tightly organised and regulated so as to minimise its impact. While the whole of the UK is theoretically available for training, some places, such as major built-up areas and airspace around airports, have to be avoided. But otherwise, low-flying activity is spread as widely and equitably as possible. In addition, safety is always paramount. Height and speed restrictions are rigid. And flying at the lower heights required in operations is only allowed in 3 tactical training areas, and then only at specified times, which are published in advance. Of course, it would be ideal if low-flying training could be avoided in the UK altogether. But although in fact there's been a reduction in fast jet low flying of 60% in the past 10 years, there is a minimum for which there's no adequate alternative. Some low-flying training does take place abroad, reducing the amount in the UK. But exporting the training is expensive and can be difficult to support, especially when operational commitments are high. Simulators are increasingly sophisticated, but still cannot substitute for the real thing. And low flying over water is not realistic preparation for the variations in terrain encountered over land. With the developments in weapons technology and air warfare in a constant state of change, perhaps one day combat low flying will not be an operational requirement. But so far, the main technological advance has been to turn night to day. In any case, the humanitarian requirement will still be there in the years ahead. And helicopters are still going to be used to move troops and supplies. For the present, there are still many circumstances in combat operations where there's no alternative to low flying other than not flying the mission. And more often than not, there are reasons why that's an unacceptable alternative. If the British Armed Forces are to fulfill their defence mission, they must be ready for all eventualities, not just the easiest option. so they have to retain a high level of skill, which can only be achieved through repeated training. A good proportion of that has to be done in the UK, along with a small percentage of training carried out here by our allies. For there really is no substitute for the real thing. Aircrew are professionals, and that applies as much to their awareness of their responsibilities to the general public as to their capabilities as pilots. So part of the detailed planning that goes on before any low-flying sortie is to ensure the minimum disturbance to people on the ground.
Beware of that. And also men working at height, fixing those lights up to 2,000 feet. So just remember those avoids. Other than that, within the lakes and in the Pennines, the standard glider sites are active.
It's taken this pilot a good 3 hours of meticulous planning to reach this point.
Weather's still looking good. Glider sites were left of the nose by 8. Town on our nose, 7 miles, kicking to the north to stay clear.
The Ministry of Defence is committed to the protection of the environment in line with government policy and regulates the UK low-flying system accordingly. In addition, the RAF police carry out regular covert surveys of low-flying to see that the strict rules are being adhered to. And the Ministry of Defence has a comprehensive complaints procedure in place, and every complaint is taken seriously.
Well, tally 1 aircraft, right, 4 o'clock. Next waypoint, rolling out for the town. Clear of the town. Through the valley, through the wadi, there's our lake. Over and left. Rolling out. Time is on. Looking for the target. Speed's good, late arm's going on. Right clock, got our bridge.
Britain has a fundamental interest in a secure and stable Europe, and a responsibility to act as a force for good in the world. So we must have armed forces that can deploy at a moment's notice to conduct effective military operations of every sort, and that includes all aspects of air power. But we cannot know where the next operational deployment will be or what it will entail. Each case is different. Just as the Kosovo conflict ended without the need for fast jet low flying, so the next operation might need it from the outset. Mission success means completing the task and surviving in all weather conditions and despite anything an aggressor may do. In many circumstances, that success can only be achieved by low flying. It may even make the difference between life and death. British aircrew must therefore keep their highly perishable low-flying abilities practiced and ready for immediate use. Because in today's uncertain world, one thing is certain. Low flying is an essential skill.